I go run away when my sins take over.
More agitations on the hate speech bill as civil society groups today protest the proposed legislation, and social media bill took their demand to the National Assembly. And pressure mounts on the presidency over the board of the NDDC as screened by the Senate. As the board is not yet inaugurated by the president, the intrigues and politicking thickens. We dissect that matters and some of the political issues raised over that matter tonight. Hello everyone and welcome to the program. This is Politics Today live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimalia, Channels Television's global headquarters in Lagos. It's Wednesday and it's a 1 hour stretch of the program. So stay glued because we have some very interesting conversations tonight on the program. Of course, they are of national importance. The issues of the social media bill, the issues of the hate speech bill, and of course, what is happening to the NDDC board as the names and the nominees were presented to the National Assembly by the president, but yet 3 weeks after that, those nominations were sent to the National Assembly and screened by the Senate, they're not yet inaugurated. There are also debates against that move. That look, the reason is because of the interim board. What is the legality? We'll dissect all those issues tonight for you because there are interesting scenarios playing out in the last few days. But let's check out some political stories that we're following for you on our political roundup.
A bill for an act to ensure that 40% of the nation's annual budget be earmarked for capital projects in the next 10 years has just killed second reading in the House of Representatives. The bill, which is sponsored by the Speaker, Mr. Femi Gbajabiamila, seeks to pay more attention to infrastructure development. According to the Speaker, the bill is expected to stimulate the economy and increase the nation's GDP. The Speaker is of the opinion that the numerous abandoned projects in the country could be blamed on the poor allocation of capital projects over the years. In supporting the bill, the lawmakers agreed that there is need to increase the revenue generation of the country to meet up with the new bill. Senator Dino Melaye of the PDP is not happy with the plans of the electoral umpire and wants the exercise to be cancelled over what he describes as intimidation of voters and violence in the first conduct of the poll. Senator Melaye today approached INEC again with yet another petition and is asking the Commission to act on his petition and not start preparing for the supplementary election. The PDP candidate is asking INEC to postpone the exercise, alleging that INEC did not include some of the polling units that were cancelled during the November 16th election in the forthcoming supplementary poll.
We have attached INEC results where polling units were cancelled by INEC. But because they know that those areas are our stronghold, they have refused to list them for the supplementary election. And if INEC cannot be appropriating and reprobating.
Governor Mai Mala Buni of Yobe State says the number of out-of-school children in the state stands at 400,000 due to the spate of Boko Haram attacks in the state. Speaking at the opening of the State Executive Council retreat, Governor Buni says the government is making positive efforts to address the situation. He asked that his administration has initiated reforms that have made the state the second highest in terms of budgetary allocation to the education sector. The Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde has proposed a budget of 208 billion naira for the year 2020. Presenting the budget before the House of Assembly, Governor Makinde said the budget was prepared with a realistic and sustainable view to cater for the well-being of the people of the state and to improve significantly critical sectors that are in dire need of help.
Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. So today, some civil society groups took to their agitation to the National Assembly. They were protesting the proposed hate speech bill and social media bill, and they took their demand to the doorsteps of Nigerian federal lawmakers. The protest tagged "Say No to Hate Speech" bill took place at the National Assembly gate. The protesters stormed the National Assembly in their numbers, bearing placards and banners with bold inscriptions like hashtag say no to social media bill and hashtag say no to hate speech bill. That bill is to set up a commission for the prohibition of hate speeches in the country, and which was introduced on the floor of the Senate earlier in the month by Senator Shabi Abdullahi, the deputy whip of the Senate. The bill, which is sponsored by the former Senate spokesperson, Senator Abdullahi Shabi, has passed first reading.
And we say no, we will not agree that these things that is happening in the country concerns.
It is not the number that gather here today, but the resolve of Nigerians to resist and to reject this obnoxious bill called the anti-social media bill and hate speech bill. And we want to send our legislators a good information that you should not be the legislators that are going all over the world to shop for evil. The last hope of the common man today in Nigeria is the social media.
Exactly.
And today, because that's the last hold that these people want to take over, and Nigerians are telling them, please let us be. And that is why we have come here today, to make it absolutely clear to them that you were not elected to serve the executive.
Well, that is not the only thing agitating the minds of some Nigerians, especially civil society organizations. Today, members of the Civil Society Situation Room are asking the National Assembly to prioritize the passage of bills proposing electoral reforms over those targeting the prohibition of hate speech. Speaking at a joint meeting with an independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to review the just concluded Kogi and Bayelsa State governorship elections in Abuja, the convener of the Civil Society Situation Room, Mr. Clement Unwankwo, insists that there is urgent need for these reforms in order to curtail the excesses of politicians during future elections. Meanwhile, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, says the reported violence in the just concluded Kogi elections were expected, but rather than blame the electoral umpire for those anomalies, the politicians should be held responsible.
To one of the committee chairmen yesterday that this bill on electoral act reform is much more urgent than the hate speech bill, and so we would be very disappointed if the hate speech bill was to have a public hearing before the electoral act amendment bill, and it was laughed off. But I think it's something that as part of our advocacy on the hate speech issue we need to take forward.
At some point in the program, we take up that issue. One of the leading opposition voices in Nigeria will join us on the program to talk about this development. If the hate speech bill is really needed in Nigeria, what about the social media bill? Is it what is needed in Nigeria? And what happened in the Kogi and Bayelsa election and the outcome of those elections? What are the issues? We'll talk about it in a moment on the program. But let's shift our focus momentarily to the issues relating to the development in the Niger Delta region of the country. You may ask, why is this important? Take a moment. The mainstay of Nigeria's economy is oil. And where does this come from? The Niger Delta region. So there's been a lot of politicking about the development. There's been agitation over the years about what is happening and how the monies that go into that region is spent. So it is over 3 weeks now since the Senate screened the nominees of the NDDC, the Niger Delta Development Commission, and the president transmitted that nomination list to the National Assembly. But those names or those nominees are still not inaugurated. The Senate then confirmed 15 nominees for the board of the NDDC and withheld confirmation for one of them from Rivers State. Days before the Senate screened the nominees, the Minister of the Niger Delta Affairs, Godswill Akpabio, inaugurated a committee set up an interim management committee to run the Niger Delta Development Commission, the NDDC. Well, what are the issues? The budget for the NDDC was only, for 2019 and 2020, was only taken to the National Assembly yesterday. And one of the things that was said on the floor of the Senate was that they would not attend to it until the inauguration of the board is attended to by the president. So there seems to be a stalemate. But it does look like the feelers that we're getting is that the board is not inaugurated because of the audits or the probe that has been that is going to be undertaking over the NDDC, because you remember the president did say at some point that over the almost 20 years, money that has been spent through the NDDC in the Niger Delta, nothing to show for it. So he wanted to probe it. Tonight, we look at the politics. Why the delay in the inauguration of the NDDC? A lot of people are agitating and asking the president, why not inaugurated? Inaugurated? Is the interim board, is it legal? Some people are even putting question mark based on what the NDDC Act says on the formation of the board, whether or not the president followed what the NDDC Act talks about. Tonight we dissect the issues and get different angles to this matter. Let me be speaking. We'll be speaking to the leader in the Ijaw Youth Organization and Niger Delta activist, Mr. Eric Omare. Thank you so much for coming on the program tonight. Much. And also a lawyer. He's also from the Niger Delta region, so he's an interested party, if you say so. Mr. Liberos Oshoma. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming tonight. Let me ask, let me begin with Mr. Omare. Why do you think the president has not inaugurated the board?
Well, apart from the statement by the Minister of Niger Delta on the day he inaugurated the Interim Management Committee, there haven't been any official pronouncement from the presidency as to why the substantive board of the NDDC has not been inaugurated. But the minister, during the inauguration of the Interim Management Committee, did say that the Interim Management Committee will hold forth during the forensic audit, while the substantive board that has been confirmed by the Senate will be in abeyance until the forensic audit is complete. And our view is that that is an illegality ab initio, because in the first place, there is no room for an Interim Management Committee where there exists a substantive board that has been confirmed by the National Assembly in pursuant to the provisions of the NDDC Act, especially Section 2. And then most importantly, the question of forensic, the substantive board being in abeyance because of the forensic audit, it doesn't hold water, because the function of a forensic audit and that of the substantive board of the NDDC are two different functions. And this is, in any case, this is not the first time that we're having forensic audits of organizations in Nigeria. We have had it with the NNPC, we have had it with the National Security Advisor's Office and several other organizations. And those audits didn't stop the organizations from functioning the way they ought to be. So our position is that the delay in inaugurating the substantive board of the NNPC, of the NDDC, is unacceptable to us. It's retarding the development of the Niger Delta, and there is tension is already building in the region. Which
why do you want it urgently? I mean, what's in it? It's not as if the NDDC does not have a leadership.
No, as far as we are concerned, the NDDC does not have a leadership, because who is there? The people that are there are illegal. Their stay is not in line with the NDDC.
But that's what the president wanted.
No,
but the NDDC Act provides that the president has the power to determine the leadership of the NDDC.
Yes, and the president has already exercised his powers in accordance with the NDDC Act by sending the names of the nominees to the National Assembly, and the National Assembly has cleared them. In other words, the president cannot exercise his powers in two opposite directions. He cannot, in one breath, appoint a substantive board, and in another breath, appoint an interim management committee.
Do you agree that there needs to be an audit?
Well, we agree, absolutely. We are 100% in support.
But do you think that the audit can happen under a board that is going to be a substantive board?
Yes, because, for example, what is the difference between the interim management committee and a substantive board? There is no difference.
Because some people are saying some of you are agitating for the inauguration are just being impatient. It's just 3 weeks since the screening. The president just came back about a week and a half ago to the country.
No, we're not impatient. In the first place, the agitation ought not to even be in an ideal situation. When you send names of nominees to the National Assembly and they are cleared, the next logical thing to be done is to inaugurate them, and rather than to set up an interim management committee that has no function to play, that will not do the Niger Delta any good. What is it that the interim management committee will do, other than spending the resources of the region that needs to be used for the development of the region?
But there are just 3 of them.
Yes, there are 3 of them. But there are 3 of them. The point we are making is that they don't have any value. Their being there does not add any value to the Niger Delta region. There is nothing that they can do that the substantive board cannot do. So instead of having an interim management committee that is not contemplated under the law, let's have the substantive board to perform their statutory responsibility while the audit is going on and supervised directly by Mr. President.
You think there is a political machination around this?
Oh, yeah, obviously. But we feel strongly that we have a leader in this country, and that leader is President Buhari. So President Buhari needs to give direction, needs to provide that leadership that is required of him, especially for those of us from the Niger Delta region.
Mr. Oshoma, give us some legal perspective into this. Has the president done anything wrong, legally speaking, for not inaugurating the board of the NDC since the Senate screened the nominees?
Yeah, you see, quite unfortunately, that we are in a country where we establish or enact laws, and then we do the exact opposite of the laws that we have enacted. If you look at Section 2 of the NDDC Act, it says there is hereby established for the Commission a governing board. In this act referred to as the board, which shall consist of the chairman and all members, about 17 of them altogether. And then also, if you look at Section 4 of the same act, it spells out how the office of the chairman shall be rotated. Look at Section 12 also. It spells out the functions of the managing director of the NDDC. And so, I quite agree with my friend and brother here, Omari, that the place of an interim management committee, it's not provided for in the NDDC Act. And the reason for setting up this interim management committee, if I hear clearly the words of the Honorable Minister for Niger Delta, is that there are allegations of mismanagement of funds, and so there's need to investigate the culpability of some persons and they clean the urgent table. But since this process is not provided for in the Act, I expected that the President, having appointed constitutionally members of the board, they ought to have been inaugurated, and then you set up an audit committee. The audit committee can work hand in hand. Mind you, the board that had been appointed and were not the members that they are investigating. And so, really, there would be no friction. But
So
the situation,
are you saying the interim board is illegal?
yes, it is.
Just
Patently
a moment.
It's illegal.
Let's hear from perhaps a voice of reason also in the APC, or a chieftain of the APC and one of the founders of the party. Chief Tony Momo joins us via telephone. Thank you. It's an honor to speak to you tonight, Chief Momo, for joining us on the program tonight. Give us an understanding, because a lot of people are wondering why an interim board when there is also the NDDC substantive board has been screened by the Senate. What are your views on this?
Thank you, Shehu, for asking my opinion on these issues. Nigeria is a country of laws and a country with laws. A country with laws is where you have so many laws and you do not apply the law where the way laws are applied all over the world. We have many laws in the books that are not applied in accordance with the way they should be applied to access due process. All the local governments are supposed to be elected. Section 7 of the Constitution. How many local governments are elected? I'm only saying that we move to accept results if the laws regulating the procedure for assessing results are for one reason or the other inapplicable or inaccessible. The Niger Delta Commission is established by law, but we have a situation in our hands where the president says from 2001 and 2019, I want an audit, a forensic audit. And everything we have done since 2001, there doesn't seem to be anything to show for it. So it says there will be a forensic audit. And he wants to give a clean a clean slate to the board coming in that the National Assembly or that the Senate has cleared. And what he does is to appoint a 3-man committee, interim committee. And that 3-man interim committee will supervise technically what the forensic audit is doing, after which they will package their results.
Chief Mama, apologies to Botting. We need to take some messages now. There is a statutory break that we need to take. But when we come back, there is a question I'd like to ask you. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. I still have my guests in the studio. Don't go anywhere, everyone. We'll be right back. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. Let's get back to the conversation. Chief Tony Momoh, chieftain of the APC, one of the founding fathers of the party, has been speaking to us on the program, as well as Mr. Liberus Oshoma, a lawyer, a son of the Niger Delta also, and Mr. Eric Omari, Niger Delta activist, have been speaking on the situation in the Niger Delta. Almost a month after the Senate, I think the Senate screened those nominees on the 1st of November. 15 of them out of 16, the nomination from Rivers State was stepped down. So what is happening? There seems to be some confusion. Agitations are already in the air about why the president has not inaugurated the board. So let's get back to the conversation. Chief Tony Momoh, thank you so much for talking to us, former Minister of Information. Well, Chief, what is happening? Are you saying, because there seems to be some confusion in some quarters, are you saying that the president not inaugurating the board immediately isn't wrong? Because some people say the interim board is illegal.
I said that the president, on the table of the president, the buck stops. He knows the problem that the Niger Delta board have constituted since 2001. And in his own assessment, he wants the board to have a clean slate. And he does not want them perhaps to be part and parcel of the findings or the influences that may occasion the work that they interfere with the work of the forensic audit. I believe the president has the prerogative to decide what he wants, and the interim committee is there to take all the bombing and give the president a report, which will be given to the board that will be inaugurated to now apply in the amendment of the Niger Delta Commission. That's my belief. And I think the president can do so. We have been having interim committees, even like I was referring to all these the local governments, where we have interim committees where the constitution specifically says there must be an elected local government.
So, sir, Prince Momoh, are you saying that, well, it's okay to correct an anomaly with an illegality? Because when people say, wait for a minute, the interim board is illegal, but you said, if I get it right, that it's a child of necessity based on what is happening in the NDDC. That's why the reason the president set up the interim committee. But people have said that is illegal. What do you think weighs heavier between the legal thing and what is necessary?
What is necessary should override whatever arrangement we have, if what is necessary will cure the problem.
So, going forward, for those who are agitating that the board, the substantive board, as screened by the Senate, should be inaugurated, what would you say to them? And where do you think that the interim board activities should terminate?
No, I agree that the board should run NDDC. But NDDC to be run is as careless as problems, which a forensic audit will point to. Problems that a forensic audit will point out. Then the board itself will be inaugurated to attend to the problems. And the best way is to have an interim arrangement that is being, although it's not in the Constitution, but it's a child of necessity. The interim committee is a child of necessity. And it was not what Akpabio, the minister, when brought from behind. There's no way a minister can operate without the approval of the president. So people are just blaming the minister of Niger Delta. I think they missed the point. Look at the problem. Look at the problem of NDDC. Nothing, according to the president, is there to show for what they have done since 2001 to 2019. The board that is coming, be fair to the board and give them a clean slate to work on.
Sorry, before we allow you go, Prince Momo, there's a critical question. The role of what the president wanted, the forensic audit, the probing of the NDDC and their spendings over these years. A lot of people would think, why don't you allow the anti-corruption agencies, there is the ICPC, there is the EFCC, to do that and not boarding the interim board or some other ad hoc bodies to do that?
I agree with you, but there are many voices pointing to the direction of the NDDC and its problems. And the person who takes the decision is the president, and he has chosen an interim committee. Why do we say the interim committee is not should not operate because it's not in the law?
Well, I mean, in all of this, do you have a feeling? Does anything tell you, sir, Prince Momo? Does anything give you a feeling that the president may have made some mistake along the line? Do you have that feeling?
So, the buck stops on the desk of the president. The good, the bad, and the ugly is blamed for the good, the bad, and the ugly. And let us see what happens after the interim committee has worked.
Prince Tony Momo, former Minister of Information, one of the founding fathers of the APC. Thank you so much for talking to us tonight on the program. Well, let me get back to you. So it comes to the issue of the child of necessity, legality, morality, and perhaps the gale of confusion in the NDDC.
Yeah, first and foremost, I must salute our father. I call him Daddy, Prince Tony Momo. I could see the confusion. It's unfortunate, it's very unfortunate that these are parents. I disagree with him completely. You know, these are our parents that we look up to, that we believe should speak truth to power at all costs, irrespective of what is involved. I sympathize with his confusion because you could see that even though he does not agree...
Is it a confusion or what he believes?
He doesn't believe in it.
No, but you heard him. He said that is what
directly.
That is the opinion.
That is why he said the box stop at the president table. When you asked him directly...
Isn't it the fact that
in your opinion, as a lawyer, as a very senior lawyer, do you think that this is right? He said the box stops at the president's table. What that
Isn't that a fact that the box stops at the table of the president?
That wasn't the question. The question, nobody's in doubt about where it stops. The question is in your opinion, legally speaking. And then he also cited the fact that the local government are managed by caretaker committees. But does that make it right? That's the issue. We had consistently criticized governors for appointing caretaker committees when there should be elected officers at the local government. That shouldn't be an example. And in a constitutional democracy, we are guided by laws and not by the whims and caprices of the president.
The confusion, is it in the presidency or in the NDDC or in the ministry or where?
It is not in the president's power. It is not in his... What we are trying to do here now is that we are impliedly saying the president tomorrow, if he feels like he can suspend some sections of the constitution and then says the box stop at my table and so I want to do this. When NNPC was audited, nobody suspended the board of NNPC and say, let's have an interim management committee. What I am saying here is, legally speaking, by the provisions of the law, Section 4 of the NDDC Act, you do not need an interim management.
Okay, let me because there's another issue.
You have auditors.
There's another issue, Mr. Liberoso. Another issue on the table is the fact that the NDDC Act right there also states how the screening of the nominees should take place. That the House needs to be in consultation with members of the House.
And members of the House of Reps.
Yeah, that didn't happen. Is that another confusion? Also, the rotational policy in the aspect stipulated by the NDDC Act is not followed in the nomination.
So you see, this is where all of this comes. First and foremost, when this act was enacted, I see this. These are the provisions of turn by turn rulership. It's our turn to chop now. And so that's what led to all of this turn by turn leadership. But unfortunately, that is a provision of the law. Federal, no, not just federal character. Turn by turn. If it's federal character, it should be that, let's have, representative from different regions.
No, but it's the NDDC, so
yes, but this idea of this state will be chairman, and then after that, the next states will be chairman. You start from Abia, you enter Bayelsa, you enter Akwa Ibom, Cross River, and the rest. As if, when you become chairman, there are benefits to your state. That's the implication of this law. But that is the position of the law.
Are you saying the law is faulty?
On the issue.
Are you saying the law is faulty?
For me, yes. On that note.
Because the formers of this law are thinking that for us to have fairness
inclusiveness.
Yes, let's have it spread around so that there will be rotation. And you say that is wrong.
It is the same problem we have with presidency. Let me tell you, Obasanjo's presidency did not do any good to the average Yoruba man. The same thing with Jonathan's presidency. How well did he help the average Otoke man? But what I am saying, let's have people who are capable at the end of affair. But unfortunately, the law has provided that it shall be rotational. And since that is the provision of the law, until that provision is amended, it should be followed strictly. But here, what you have is, it has, so far, they have followed the provisions of the law until now. For reasons best known to them, they said, okay, no, if you give the MDship to a Delta, and then you also give the chairmanship, because ordinarily it would have been the turn of a Delta to take the slot of the chairmanship. But there would be a conflict of interest, kind of. But what my position is simple. Why not give the slot of MDship to another region that is also eminently qualified for it now, and leave the chairmanship for Delta State that is constitutionally required to take that slot now?
So there's a problem.
Yes, that's
let me allow Mr. Omari to come here. In all of this now, how long do you think this will go on for? Because if Prince Tony Momo says the buck stops at the table of the president, there's some things that you are probably not privy to that the president is privy to. When the South governors met and the minister met with the president, there are a few things that he told the president is aware of. And he says, this is the reason why I want to do the forensic audit. Should the president have some information that you are not aware of, would you blame him for it?
Okay, first, before I come to that, let me make the point that under the NDDC Act and by operation, the way it has been operated so far, Delta is entitled to both the chairman and the managing director. And just like he explained, for some reasons of equity, the chairmanship was given to those states, though some people will have issues with it. But the point must be made that Delta is ordinarily entitled to all the two. So the question of moving managing directorship to other states so as Delta can have the chairman, I don't think that arises. Okay. So that's the point need to be made clear. But on the question of whether the president is privy to some fact that may have necessitated what he's doing, I think the point has been made clearly, that the office of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is a creation of law. Therefore, President...
Sorry, apologies. If you go back, from what I know and what I've read, the MDship was supposed to go to Ondo State. Chairmanship to Delta State. You've heard about the agitation?
That's not correct. The way it is operated is that the four major oil-producing communities, the managing directorship rotates among them. The states
based on the highest, quantum of their production.
Exactly. And it started from Delta to Bayelsa, from Bayelsa to Rivers to Akwa Ibom. The last substantive managing director was from Akwa Ibom. So logically, and also based on production quantum, as today, Delta State has the highest production in Nigeria.
Isn't supposed to go to Ondo State, which is next?
No, that's not the provision of the law. Let me put your kind permission quickly read. There shall be for the commission a managing director and two executive directors who shall be indigenous of oil-producing areas, starting with the members of state of the commission with the highest producing quantum of oil, and shall rotate amongst member states in the order of producing. And it doesn't mean that it is only the four states with the highest quantum.
So a lot of people say that
rotation shall start from there.
Their school of thought that is supposed to be next to Ondo State.
Exactly.
That's a line of argument. But
no, that's the provision of the law.
My own interpretation of that law is that it should be among the states with the
No, it
highest
starts
quantum of
from
production.
among the 4 states, and then it goes to the other. It's clear. The words are clear and unambiguous.
Yeah.
Why does it seem that the NDDC has caused a lot of confusion?
Because it's turn by turn. Come chop.
It's, I think that in any human endeavor, there is bound to be such disagreement. But what is important is strict adherence to the law. And that's the bone of contention. Even the question of forensic audit that we are talking about, if you read the provisions of Section 19, 20 and 21, you observe that if those provisions had been followed, there wouldn't have been need for forensic audit. Because by those provisions, there ought to be a yearly audit of the annual report of the NDDC, which ought to include a financial audit of the NDDC. But what has been happening over the years is that the presidency, which is a supervisory authority over the NDDC, is more or less interested in using the NDDC as a platform to patronize political loyalists, rather than using it as a platform to develop the Niger Delta region. And that's why we're saying, look, moving forward, there must be strict compliance with the provisions of the NDDC Act for us to make progress. Because it's not enough to say you had carried out forensic audit. If we go the way we are going, maybe in another 19 years, you will set up another forensic audit. So what that simply means is that we are moving in a vicious circle without making progress. So whatever the information that is privy to, what is important is that there is need for strict adherence to the law establishing the NDDC. And that simply means that there's no room for an interim management committee. And let me make this point. When Prince Memo, our father, was talking, he was talking about the interim management committee supervising the forensic audit. For God's sake, the interim management committee are not the forensic auditors. They don't need any special committee to supervise them. Our position is that the president and commander-in-chief is the one who has the power to superintend over the NDDC. And in these circumstances, having regard to the conflict of interest everywhere, especially from key players in the Niger Delta region, the person who is in better position to supervise, to appoint and supervise this forensic audit is the president himself, and not any interim management committee. But because most of those people, one way or the other, have interested parties.
Doesn't he have the power to delegate?
Yeah, he has the power to delegate, but the power of delegation must be for the interest of the people.
What the outgone board, the MD of the board was from Akwa Ibom State.
Yes.
The current minister is from Akwa Ibom State.
And they are close political associates.
Definitely there will be conflict of interest when the minister appoints an interim management committee to supervise an audit.
No, the president appointed. The minister inaugurated.
Acting
because that's what because I've asked the spokesperson of the president here that was the president privy to the setting up of the interim.
Let's assume.
He did say, he said on this program that the president ordered the formation of the interim board.
Fantastic. I concede to that. But the question here is, when the law says you shall have a board, and then the interim management committees are not the auditors, there is a different, there are companies, there are auditors who will audit the books. And then also, people have violated Section 19 and Section 20 of the NDDC Act. These are people who are still alive, who did not submit quarterly reports and annual reports. And they are still working. Nobody, EFCC had not invited them or investigated them. ICPC is not investigating them. And yet now, you set up an audit, and then you have appointed members of the board. You say, no, stay in abeyance. Let there be an interim management committee. Interim management committee to run the affairs of the board. What you're doing is that you're giving absolute powers, statutory powers, to a body that is not known to law. And so, if tomorrow they take decisions, under which law will such decisions be taken? Where will you keep them? Such decisions, if those decisions are challenged in court, and tomorrow the court says the decisions taken by an interim management committee, just like having, the Shoneko interim government, not known to our law. And the court now says that interim management committee is void ab initio, is an illegality. How do you now, can you presume that our decisions that they took were right in the face of the law? So these are the questions. So without necessarily creating all of this quagmire, the president had appointed a board. The board had been screened. The forensic audit is a different matter altogether. Anybody can do forensic audit while the board is working. And if there were provisions for an interim management committee, we wouldn't be here discussing it. But because those provisions are not there, and so as not to unnecessarily create, a presidency that can be dictatorial. Because what we are saying is you can suspend the constitution if you feel it's in the interest of the country. If we feel that the act is faulty, the president can apply to the National Assembly to amend it.
So it does look like you're putting the blame on the doorstep of the president.
Completely.
The confusion for you is at the presidency.
Yes, completely.
Okay, so we'll go on a break. When we come back, I will ask for your final thoughts in a few seconds on the program. I will move to the issues of hate speech, social media bill. There was a protest today. We get one of the leading opposition voices in Nigeria to speak to us on this matter. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us in our concluding moments on the issues of the Niger Delta. It does not look like, because the crisis seems to be enormous. So let's get the concluding thoughts of our guest tonight on this matter before we move on to the issues of hate speech and social media bill. Let me begin with you, Mr. Eric Omari, because I've had a president of the Joy Youth Council. I know also that you are a factional president of the Joy Youth Council. But is it right for me to call you president of the Joy Youth Council?
Yes, I'm the president.
There is another crisis in that area. Don't let us go into that today. So, okay. What are your final thoughts on this one? What is the way out?
The way out is moving forward. Mr. President, without wasting time, must inaugurate the substantive board of the NDDC because there is already a brewing tension in the region. Part of it is that you have a substantive board that cut across the entire Niger Delta region. Then you put them in abeyance and bring 3 people from only 3 states, excluding the remaining 6 states, to run the affairs of the Niger Delta. That alone is political exclusion. That's people are feeling agitated about it. So that issue needs to be addressed. And secondly, yesterday the Senate decided that the budget of the NDDC will not be attended to until the substantive board is inaugurated. We commend them. On our part,
is that not grandstanding?
It's not grandstanding. We feel that that budget ought not to even be accepted in the first place. Go by Section 18 of the NDDC Act. It is a board, substantive board, that ought to prepare the budget in the first place. So who prepared the budget that was submitted? The legal contractual called IMC.
But there's a ministry that is supervising it.
No, the ministry cannot prepare a budget for the NDDC.
But there's a civil service structure in the NDDC.
Yes, but there must be a leadership. There must be a leadership. The law only recognizes leadership to prepare the budget of the NDDC.
Here, the president is not a lawyer. My problem here is that he has lawyers. He's surrounded by lawyers and elder statesmen. And I don't expect where the president needs quality advice, they should advise him appropriately. This idea of believing that the president should know all will not lead us anywhere. At the end of the day, we turn around, blame the president, forgetting that it is those people who are supposed to be advising him, that have refused to advise him legally, that are causing the problem. I believe if the president if quality advice, sound legal opinion on the basis of this act were available to Mr. President, he wouldn't have consented to the appointment of 3 members of an interim committee because it is patently illegal. Haven't appointed a board because in the first place, why would the president nominate a board when he knows he wants to appoint an interim committee that has no tenure, fixed tenure?
I must sincerely thank both of you for coming on. Mr. Eric Omari, president, factional president of the Joy Youth Council. Mr. Liberas Oshoma is also for a Niger Delta man.
I'm not a president. Not a president.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on tonight.
My pleasure.